Hi everyone, welcome back, and in this video I wanted to share with you some tips on writing effective user stories. So before that I want to say a big thanks for all of you subscribers who have been supporting me through this journey, and I also want to let you know that to keep continuing to support me and this channel. So let's get into this. So the very first tip of writing user stories is that you as a business analyst, you are solely responsible for writing user stories. If at all you're giving user stories to developers to do the writing, then you need to stop that as fast as possible. Why is it that you as a business analyst, you would know the real business value and also how the feature is supposed to be implemented. That is the requirement side of the feature. So it's always best that you write the user story. So in case the customer has any questions, you would be able to convey the information to the customers, as well as the user story would be from the customer point of view, which is easily understandable to the customers. Also, if you see, if developers are going to write a user story, I'm not saying that they write very bad user stories. It's that it's going to be too technical and they might miss out on the business value. So always you take ownership of the user stories. The second tip is writing effective user titles, the user story titles. Okay, and here is why. As a business analyst, dealing with a huge backlog and large number of user stories can be cumbersome, and sometimes easy retrieval of a particular user story might be sometimes tricky because you're dealing with so many user stories on your backlog board. So it's always important that you should be able to write good and precise titles for user stories so that it can be easily accessible and identifiable. So instead of writing this long description that doesn't even fit into your card, you can write a short and a very precise title for your user story. For example, catalog, which is the epic, and then you can put it as display product list. So display product list is the actual function. So this fits into your card and it's easily identified. The third tip is that user stories need to be written from the customer point of view. And as I mentioned it earlier, customers need to understand the user story, and they would be the prior members who are going to prioritize the user stories also. So it's very important that they understand what the user story is about. And also it's very important that developers understand the requirement from the customer's point of view rather than from the system point of view. So therefore, whenever you write effective user stories, you need to write it from the customer point of view. So here is an example. So if you see the example over here, system should display a list of all product records in the website. So this is from the system perspective, the way you write a user story. In this user story, if you notice, there is no value that is being mentioned over here. What value is being provided to the end user? But if you look at the above example, as an online shopper, I should be able to view list of all products so that I can choose the right product according to my needs. So this provides the actual intention of the end user as well as what value we are trying to provide to the end user with this feature. So always write it from the customer point of view rather than the system point. The next tip is writing user stories in the active voice. So it's not a hard and fast rule that you have to write user stories in active voice, but it's just more meaningful and you can easily understand it. Okay. So here is an example of how you can write user stories in an active and in a passive voice. So let us take this example of a passive voice. Products can be viewed by online shoppers so that they can make choices according to their needs. Now compare it with the active voice. As an online shopper, I should be able to view the list of all products so that I can choose the right product according to my needs. When you compare these two statements, always the active voice conveys the requirement from the customer point and doesn't sound like a second person conveying the requirement. The next tip is writing user stories with a specific user role. So why do I say that is when you write user stories with a specific user role, you're being more precise on who is that particular user who's going to use that particular requirement. So just writing a general description saying as a user I should be able to do it, developers and the other team is not very well aware of who is that exact user who is going to use this particular feature. So by mentioning the user role, the developers and the other team members would be able to identify who is that right user who is going to use the feature. So here is an example of how you can do that. So if you see the first example over here, as an online shopper, I should be able to view the list of all products so that I would be able to choose the right product according to my needs. When you compare it with the second statement, as a user, I should be able to view the list of all products. So here in the second statement, user is very generic. It can mean anything. It can mean the website admin, it can be a shopper, it can be a customer, it can be the vendor, it can mean anyone. So always mentioning the exact role, such as the first example, online shopper, it would give more information to the team as to who is the exact user role who's going to work and to interact with that particular feature. In this way, it will definitely avoid confusion with what type of user is going to use that particular feature, or it will also avoid confusion as what would be the access levels and many other confusions. So always try to maintain the exact user role. The next tip is writing user stories with singular roles. So this is also not going to be an hard and fast rule, and sometimes these user stories might be the same when you write singular or plural roles, but there can be some situations where it might create some confusion. So let us see this example to understand more. So let's take this example. As a customer, I should be able to upload my profile picture so that I can be easily identified. In the second example, customers would be able to upload profile pictures. So when you compare these two statements, the first statement is very clear, stating that a customer can upload a profile picture. So it means per customer, one profile picture. In the second statement, accidentally, if you write it in the plural form, customers would be able to upload profile pictures. Sometimes it can create confusion with the team, such as meaning that one customer would be able to upload multiple profile pictures. So it's not in all user stories you need to follow it, but kindly be conscious in some user stories. The last tip is write user stories which are in the short term and not for the long term. So there are certain situations where you might have a lot of user stories and you try grooming all those stories. It's fine to write these stories and to groom the stories, but don't put too much of details into this story, especially if you are unclear of the requirement. So you always need to make sure that you have write and define user stories for at least 2 future iterations and not more than that. Because sometimes there's a chance that the user stories might become out of date, it might be pulled out of a particular the backlog itself. So it's very important that you focus on maybe 2 to 3 iteration stories first, and then focus on the later on stories. Another reason why is because sometimes the scope of that requirement might change, or you might not have enough of information to put in that story, which might create some confusion. So it's always better to focus only on these few, iterate on the first 2 iteration stories and write detailed user stories so that the team is clear about of what are the upcoming features that need to be developed. So these were some of the tips that I wanted to share with you on writing effective user stories. So apart from the INVEST principles of writing effective user stories, these are some tips that you can follow and write these user stories, which would definitely be helpful for the team as well as for you as a business analyst, and also for developers who are going to develop that user story. So if you liked this video and you found it helpful and useful to you, please do like this video. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do subscribe to this channel, and also do share your feedback. Thank you.